So I got something really cool in the mail the other day. It's the new Marvel Unmatched for King and Country.
If you're a fan of the channel, consider supporting me on Patreon. For as little as $1 per month, you can help me continue to bring you premier Unmatched content. Unlock exclusive rewards by becoming a patron today.
What's up, guys? Zero Skater here, and that's right, we are going to be cracking open the newest Marvel Unmatched for King and Country on camera for you guys and take a closer look at everything inside the box. And of course, I'll give my personal thoughts on the new fighters, and I'm just super excited because new sets are always amazing. And this set is up for pre-order on the Restoration Games website, so there will be a link in the description below. Make sure you go order yours today. But yeah, I've heard some scary things about these new fighters, so I'm a little bit concerned, but I'm sure it'll be fine. I mean, when do people not get in an uproar when a new set drops and they're all like, oh, this new fighter is so broken, and you know, it's fine. I'm sure it'll be fine. It happens every time. But I can't wait to get into it. So as always, guys, be sure to attack that like button if you enjoy the video and subscribe for more Unmatched content. And with that said, let's not wait any longer. We will crack open the new For King and Country. Alright, so here we are with For King and Country. Let's go ahead and open this thing up. And I am super excited to find out what all the hype is about with these new fighters. And anytime a new set is released, it's just so much fun to discover all the fun new matchups and things you can do. So let's take a look here. I really like this box art. It's a much more serious than like the Teen Spirit one was. And I love this Black Panther art on the side there. That strip is so cool looking. Then of course we have Black Widow and Winter Soldier. And there's another Black Widow one, it looks like. But yeah, we're gonna have Black Widow, Winter Soldier, Black Panther as the three fighters in this set. And this previously was known to be the last of the Marvel sets, but of course we've heard the announcement of the brand new, I believe it's Brains and Brawn, that has Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, and She-Hulk in it, so that's super cool. So this is not quite the last of the Marvel sets quite yet. And you can see all the different Marvel sets here in this little insert. Very cool with the checklist of the fighters. Here's, yeah, Brains and Brawn down at the bottom. She-Hulk, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange. Super cool, but nice little Marvel advertisement there. I love the purple for the rule book. Let's take a quick look through here. That Black Panther art is just awesome. He's definitely the one I'm most excited for in the set, is Black Panther, because A, I'm most familiar with him from the movies and whatnot, but B, I just think he's really cool. And definitely one of the bigger names out of the new Marvel fighters, because they chose a lot of the lesser known heroes, which is really cool for comic book fans and whatnot. But alright, so we got, of course, Battlefield items, again, making a return. I personally think those are really cool. Some of these new I haven't spoiled anything for myself, so I'm not going to read through this stuff yet on the specifics of the fighters. We'll maybe go over that when I go through the cards, but I'm keeping it all a surprise. I like to do a kind of a blind play through on my first play without looking at any of the cards or anything, and it makes it so much fun because everything you draw is just crazy, you know, and it's a big surprise. So here are the health dials here, the punch-out boards. Again, I'm personally just loving the Black Panther art. That's so cool. And we'll go through the item tokens as well after I do a playthrough. Here we have, let's take a look at the new map. So this will be the first time I'm seeing this new map. This is called the Helicarrier. And doesn't look like anything too crazy off the bat here. But got a lot of tri-zones and dual zones in this area. And then if you want to see it the back side without the circles filled in, with just the rings, you can see the art a little bit better. So that's pretty cool. Looks like it's got a lot of loops, actually, around this bottom area and maybe the top white area. So we'll see how this goes in gameplay, but excited to find out. So let's take a look at the minis. Here we see the Black Widow mini. And I know they've already revealed these, but always to see them, you know, in person is super cool. So there's Black Widow. Then we'll take a look at Winter Soldier. I personally like the color of this guy's base a lot. I know Suzanne had mentioned before about how every base color is slightly different, and sometimes that can be hard to tell with like the printing of the actual plastic, but they do choose different colors for every base, and I really like that Winter Soldier one. And of course I love the Black Panther one as well. I think the mini is super cool with the action pose. And I love purple. That's definitely one of my favorite colors, probably my favorite, and this deeper shade of purple I think is really nice. So loving that. We got some sidekick tokens here. Looks like one for Black Panther, one for, I'm assuming, Black Widow, being the red color here. So we can take a look at them. And what else do we got? Got the rivets for the health dials, of course. And then we have the decks. So Black Widow. And then we got Winter Soldier. And then we got Black Panther. So I'm really excited to get into the decks. But let's take a look at, I always miss the side panels as well. We can take a look at those. The inner panels, right? So wow, that's really cool looking. Black Panther, Black Widow, Winter Soldier, and Black Widow again. Loving the art already. Cannot wait to try out the new decks. So I am actually going to go play a free-for-all, you know, three-way free-for-all with all of the new decks. And then afterwards, I will come back and we'll go through the cards in each one and do a little bit of deck review. But don't go anywhere. I will be right back with that. Alright, so we're going to start off with the deck review for Black Widow. This is the fighter that I actually played in the game that we just finished, and it was really cool. I honestly think all three of the new fighters are super unique, very fun, and they're pretty interesting. There's a lot going on. So let's get into Black Widow. She is a move 2 fighter, ranged with 13 health. Her sidekick Maria Hill also is ranged and 6 health. So pretty low health totals, but having double ranged is very good. And the special ability is mission ready, so before drawing your starting hand, add the Moscow Protocol card to your hand, then shuffle your deck and draw 5 cards. Your starting hand is 6 cards instead of 5. So that's pretty crazy. Now, what is the Moscow Protocol, you might ask? Well, let's take a look. It is one of her mission cards. So the missions, when you acquire a new mission, which means when you play the scheme, reveal cards from the top of your deck one at a time until you reveal a new mission card. Add that mission card to your hand. Then you're going to shuffle the other cards you revealed back into the deck, and if you don't have any missions left in the deck, you don't acquire a new mission. But the schemes in her deck are all missions, and when you have to complete a certain objective in order to play that scheme in that turn, and then you do the effect, and then you're going to get another mission right to your hand, so you'll constantly have a supply of mission schemes as long as you are completing them and not running through all the rest of them remaining in your deck. So really cool idea there, really cool mechanic. And we're going to take a look at that first mission, the Moscow Protocol. So this is the one that starts in your hand. So it's a mission that an opposing fighter took damage this turn. So if that condition has been met in this turn, you use an action like normal to play this scheme, and you're going to draw 1 card and gain an action, and then you acquire a new mission. So it also has a 4 boost value, so you're going to guarantee to start off with a 4 boost value card in your starting hand, and that's pretty good for a move 2 ranged fighter. You can probably attack anybody you'd like if you want to boost with this on turn 1. I don't necessarily think you would want to, but pretty cool to have that option. So let's take a look at the next mission card. Is going to be the Firenze Agenda. Sorry if I butcher these names, but this one, if Black Widow is adjacent to an opposing hero, and that specifically has to be the hero, not the sidekick, then you can play this mission, and you're going to deal 2 damage to each opposing fighter in Black Widow's zone, and then you acquire a new mission. So this is like a Never Leave the Path from Little Red. That could be incredibly devastating, but of course you have to get adjacent to the opposing hero, and being a ranged fighter, you don't necessarily like to be adjacent to the opponent, but 2 auto damage is always really nice. Interesting thing to note though with all the missions, they're not necessarily passes because they will get you a new mission card from the deck as long as there are some remaining. So they can't be used as passes, but pretty powerful effects. So the next one we're going to see is the Kinshasa Directive. So this one, Black Widow has to be in her starting space. By starting space, that means the space that she actually started the game in. The little diamond symbol with the number, that's the space that it's referring to. So if you are there, you get to choose an opponent and they discard 2 cards. So much like the 3 wishes from the genie, it's an incredibly powerful effect, as we know, but you do have to be in your starting space in order to do this mission. Next one is going to be the Budapest Gambit. So you have 2 or fewer cards in your hand. That's other cards, so when you play this one down, this one doesn't count itself, so it's 2 or fewer other ones. So you got to have quite a small hand size, but if you do, then you're going to draw 5, and then each opponent discards a random card. Then you get a new mission, of course. Now, random discards are really, really strong, but this is definitely going to hurt you in fatigue, drawing 5 cards. So I don't know how I feel about this one. It's definitely probably one of the more situational missions, especially because the trigger condition is very hard to meet. But if you're getting aggroed down in a matchup like against T-Rex or Raptors or something, and they're just trying to pressure you and all you need to do is draw defenses to survive, well, then this card is going to be incredibly good to just draw 5 cards and make them discard. So definitely will have its uses in certain matchups. The next one is the Madripoor Sanction. And this one, Black Widow has to be in an opponent's starting space, so again, the space that they started the game in. And you deal 2 damage to each of that opponent's fighters. So incredibly strong to just deal 2 to everybody. This is actually a Never Leave the Path, but it's not relying on the zone and the positioning. So that's really, really good, but you got to get to the opponent's starting space. And then, of course, you're going to acquire a new mission. So that's a good amount of auto damage. Potentially is 4 auto damage right here just from these 2 missions. So that's really strong. And that is going to be all 5 missions. There's 5 of them in the deck. And it really is just a fun mechanic because you kind of have these little side quests that you're going for in addition to the main quest of, you know, defeating the opponent's hero, of course. So that adds another layer. It's definitely interesting for the opponent to think and consider like the different trigger conditions on the missions for you to complete them. Like, do they want to camp their own starting space so that they can avoid the auto damage, or do they want to camp your starting space so that they can prevent you from making them discard? And your opponent gets to see which mission you're getting into your hand so that they are able to play around these. So I don't know how reliable they're going to be, but it's definitely a cool and very fun mechanic, and the 4 boost value can help as well. So let's go ahead and get into the rest of the deck, starting with this first attack card called Widow's Bite. So 4 value attack. After combat, if you won the combat, your opponent discards a card. 3 copies in the deck, that's very strong. A 4 value attack is pretty likely to win unless they use a max value block, like a skirmish or leap away. If they feint it, you're happy that you dealt 2 damage. And if not, and you can win, you do force them to discard, which is very, very good. And it is chosen discard by the opponent, so it's not quite as good as random discard like an ambush, but still a great card nonetheless. Next card, we're going to see Widow's Sting, so 5 value attack. After combat, move Black Widow up to 3 spaces, very similar to Sherlock's 5 value attack. The game is afoot, so with 2 copies of this in the deck, that's some pretty good damage output there. And next card we're going to see is Fake Out, so 1 value attack only, but after combat, if you lost the combat, you draw a card and gain an action. So it's kind of like a regroup bait, where it's a 1 value and they play a defense, hopefully a good defense that you waste from their end. You will draw a card to make up for it, but you also gain an action, so it's kind of like a For My Next trick, but only a 1 value instead of 2, and it is conditional. You have to lose the combat to trigger, so if they do happen to take this attack undefended, you're feeling really bad. Next card is Double Identity, so very good defense card here. Immediately, Black Widow and Maria Hill may swap spaces, and if they do, your other fighter is now the defender, and this isn't any. So either one that's being attacked, you can swap into the other and make that one the defender. 3 copies of this in the deck is very good. We've seen similar effects from Under Achilles' Helm and the like, and this is just a really, really powerful defense card. Then we're going to see Life Model Decoy. This is Maria specific, 0 value, which is horrible, right? But after combat, if Maria Hill was defeated, you place her adjacent to Black Widow, and if you do, set Maria's health to 3. So it will prevent her from dying, essentially, and set the health back to 3. So I think it's kind of situational, and your opponent can just choose not to attack your sidekick, of course, but if you're able to body block with Maria and force the opponent to get through her before they can reach Black Widow, then this card becomes potentially very good. The next card we're going to see Widow's Line. So 3 value versatile. After combat, move the opposing fighter up to 2 spaces. 3 copies of this. It's a pretty basic card, but it's very similar to a rending shot or a pushback, you know, from Luke Cage. And moving the opposing fighter helps you if they're camping certain spaces, like if you need to trigger one of your missions that require a certain starting space, you can use this attack as your first action to push them off of that space, then maneuver onto the space so that you are set up to use your mission on your following turn. So definitely good to have an effect in the deck that allows you to move your opponent so that you're able to trigger those missions. Then we have Caught in a Web. Very interesting card. Says during combat, cancel all after combat effects of your opponent's card. So it's kind of like having additional feints in the deck, except it only cancels after combat effects, and it itself is a during combat effect. So it's going to be really interesting to see the cool uses that this card has, and figuring out what cards this is potentially really powerful against, and when this card kind of falls flat. But in certain matchups, I imagine this could be incredibly powerful. And then the next card we're going to see is Widow's Kiss. So 4 value versatile is always good to see. Immediately, the opposing fighter may not leave their space for the rest of the turn. Very similar to a Terrifying Roar from the T-Rex, but it just locks the opponent into place. So if you use this as an attack on your first action, you guarantee that they won't be getting out of your zone so that you can do a follow-up attack in that same turn. Or if you use it on defense on your opponent's last action, then you can set up for an attack on your turn. So pretty good. 4 value versatile, you can never be upset about anyways. And then we're going to see Acting Director of S.H.I.E.L.D. So that's a Maria specific 4 value versatile. There's 3 copies in the deck, so quite a lot of these with 3 boost values, really good. After combat, you move each of your fighters up to 3. They can move through opponents, and then you shuffle a scheme from your discard pile into your deck. So a very, very powerful card here for Maria. Definitely a reason to keep her around. You get movement after combat, you can get through people, so that means it can help you get out of pin scenarios, it can help you set up pin scenarios, it can get your missions back into your deck to help you out in fatigue, and give you even more potential auto damage or discards or whatever powerful mission effect you would like. So very, very crucial card right there. And then we're going to see 3 copies of Feint. So last but not least, you always love to see a full playset of Feints in a deck, because having the ability to cancel all effects on your opponent's card reliably is very good. So add those Feints onto the potential Caught in a Web cancels, and you have a really good negation package in the deck. So Black Widow, again, this was the one I played in our 3-for-all, and I got knocked out first, but it was really fun to play. And I can't wait to test her out some more in 1v1s, because I imagine it's a much different game then, and those mission cards are going to be crucial. So I think if you can take advantage of those, you're going to be in a good spot to win. And of course, just being double ranged is very strong, but it's a very unique effect. I can't quite tell how good she is at the moment, but I'm looking forward to doing more testing with her soon. So let's go ahead and move on to the next fighter. Alright, so next we will be looking at Black Panther. Now this is definitely my favorite card back out of all 3. I just love that color scheme so much. It looks so good. So Black Panther is a melee fighter, 14 health, move 2. Sidekick is Shuri, who is ranged, and 6 health. Special ability Vibranium Suit says whenever you boost, you draw a card. And cards stored in your Vibranium Suit can only be used to boost. So real quick, boosting and drawing a card is kind of like adding a boost trick effect from Houdini onto every single one of Black Panther's cards. And so you're able to cycle through your deck really well if you're looking for a specific card. And that can be really good when you're trying to play aggressively, but very bad when you're trying to play defensively, of course, because this is mandatory. So even if you're trying to boost away, you still have to draw that card, and you may not want to if you're getting close to fatigue. So definitely something to keep in mind there. But he is all about storing cards on his Vibranium suit. So Black Panther's Vibranium suit, when an effect lets you store a card in your Vibranium suit, you place it here so the boost value is showing, and you can then use those cards to boost. So it's like having a backup treasure trove of boostable cards waiting for you, so you can store them up. That is a really cool and unique mechanic, and we will see card effects in his deck taking advantage of this really well. So he can be very, very scary. So taking a look at the first card, we're going to see Analyze and Adjust. 3 value any, 3 boost value. After combat, reveal the top card of your opponent's deck and store it in your Vibranium suit. 3 copies of this in the deck is just terrifying, right? It's like milling a card out of your opponent's deck that they're not going to get to use, but you also get to store it on your suit and use it for boosting. So that's just incredibly powerful. Definitely the opponent is going to want to cancel these, but there's so many cards in this deck you want to cancel, and you can't cancel them all. So he's just looking like a menace. So next card, Vibranium Shockwave. During combat, you may boost this card. It's kind of like a second shot from Muldoon because it's the printed 2 value. Only 2 copies in the deck. Nothing too crazy, but remember you get to use your Vibranium suit cards to boost with, so you don't even have to lose hand advantage when you're using this card. Next card is going to be Microweave Mesh. 2 value block. It says during combat you may boost this card. So it's the exact same as the card we just saw with 2 copies in the deck, except this is a pure defense instead of a pure offense. And they both have the 2 boost value. So this is the yang to the other yin right there. So potentially a pretty good block card there. And then we have Evade. We've seen this from Bloody Mary. It's the same card. Just after combat, draw a card. 3 value block. 2 copies in the deck for this one. And it's an any, so important to note that Shuri can use that as well. And then we have Wakanda Forever. Now this is the huge key card in the deck, I believe. It says during combat you may boost this card up to 2 times. And remember that every time you boost, you're going to draw a card to make up for that. And you can use your Vibranium suit cards to boost, and with 3 copies of this in the deck, it could be a massive value attack or defense, seeing as it's a versatile, and it itself is a 3 boost value. So I just imagine this card getting up to like a 9 pretty easily, and this is an incredibly scary card, and just the art on it too is just incredible. It's an amazing card. I love it. So next up we see Anti-Metal Claws. During combat, add the boost value of the opposing fighter's card to this card's value, then you may boost this card. So a double effect here. First, it's kind of like an ambush, except the opponent isn't losing a card from their hand, but you're still adding the played card's boost value to this. So almost like a Look Into My Eyes from Dracula, but you're going to bump this 1 value up to probably a 3 on average, potentially way higher, but probably you can count on about a 3. And then you can boost it from there, and it's a versatile, so having like a 5 or 6 value defense is really good, and you can use the cards on your Vibranium suit to boost, so that's just really useful right there. Next card we're going to see is Ancestral Insight. This card is an absolute menace of a card. 3 copies in the deck, 4 value versatile. After combat, if you won the combat, reveal the top card of your opponent's deck and store it in your Vibranium suit. So again, milling a card off the opponent's deck and storing it. You do have to win, so it's conditional, but if you use this to attack and they faint, then you deal 2 damage, you're pretty happy about that. And if you use it on defense, it's very likely to win because it is a printed 4, which is a premium block card. So an incredibly good card there with Ancestral Insight, but it is Black Panther specific, so the opponent can play around it a little bit. Then we're going to see Cat-like Reflexes. That's a 3 value any. And after combat, if you won the combat, move one of the fighters in the combat up to 3 spaces. Nothing crazy there because it is conditional upon winning, and it's only a 3, which doesn't happen very often. So it's not super impressive, but if you do win the combat, moving one of the fighters up to 3 is a pretty decent effect. That's kind of like a pushback as well there. So one of the weaker cards in the deck for sure, but very cool art. Next up, we see Nano Triage Processor. So this is a Shuri specific card, the first of those we've seen in the deck. After combat, Shuri recovers 1 health. and if Black Panther is in the same zone as Shuri, he also recovers a health. So 2 copies of this in the deck makes a maximum of 2 healing for each fighter. So that's pretty good in terms of healing, as he only starts out at 14, and Shuri only starts out at 6 health, so they're a little bit fragile, but you get a little bit of healing from Shuri, so you definitely want to keep her around to make use of this card. And then we're going to see Feint, your standard Feint. I love the art again on this one, but only 2 copies of Feint in this deck, so not the full cancel package, which is always interesting. And this is probably the coolest looking regroup art in the whole game, in my opinion. I just love this. And only 2 regroups in the deck as well, so another interesting card count. But standard regroup after combat, draw a card. If you won, draw 2 instead. Then we're going to move on to the schemes in the deck. So Stalking Panther, there's 3 copies of this. And you move each of your fighters up to 3 spaces. They may move through opposing fighters, and you gain an action. So it's very similar to a... what is it called? Working Things Out from the Raptors, that lets you move all your dudes and they can go through people and you gain the action. I think it's the exact same effect, actually. So Stalking Panther is really good, being a melee fighter, being able to move 3 spaces before you even do anything else you gain the action. You can make a double attack turn is really helpful, and being able to move through people can get you out of pins or set up pins, so that's really useful as well. 3 copies of this, you'll love to see that. And one of the most ridiculous cards in the deck, and the final card to look at, is Tactical Remote Scanning. So a Shuri only. Choose an opponent, reveal the top 2 cards of their deck, and store them in your Vibranium suit. Wow, what a card. 2 copies of this in the deck. That means you can mill 4 cards off your opponent's deck with this card, or with these 2 copies rather, and store them in the suit to be used as boosts so that you can up the value of your other attacks and defenses. So that's just incredibly good when it comes to fatigue. This is like a ridiculous ultimate pass here, because not only are you using this scheme as one of your actions to not draw into your own deck, but the opponent is losing 2 of their cards out of their deck. So this is definitely going to help even up the deck counts for fatigue when you're using, your ability. Anytime you boost, you do have to draw mandatory, remember. And that's even if you're boosting with the Vibranium suit cards stored like from your opponent that you stole off their deck. When you use them to boost, you do have to draw. So it's definitely nice to see a card like this to make up for that card draw. Otherwise, I think Black Panther would be put in a rough spot, and he would end up decking out a lot faster than his opponents. But man, this card is incredibly powerful. So if you add it all up, you have up to 4 cards you can get with the Tactical Remote Scanning from the opponent's deck. You have 3 cards you can get from the Analyze and Adjust. And what else? You have 3 cards you can get from the Ancestral Insight. And I believe that's all of them, so that would make 4 plus 6, 10 cards. You're looking at 10 cards milled out of the opponent's deck, which is just insane. That means they get to actually play with only 2/3 of their deck. That's just crazy, right? So I can see Black Panther being an absolute menace, but he does have some weaknesses. The mandatory draw whenever he boosts can definitely be used against him from a smart opponent playing very defensively. So I'm really interested to see how he does in competitive play. This is the one I'm looking forward to testing out the most, I think. And not to mention, I just love the art on this guy. The purple color scheme is just incredible looking, and with purple being my favorite color, I really like all the art. And Black Panther is definitely one of my more known, more familiar Marvel characters, so just super cool to see this deck, and I'm really excited to try it out some more. But let's go ahead and move into the last of the 3 decks here, being the Winter Soldier. So here we are with the Winter Soldier, and I do like his color scheme as well. The kind of bluish gray looks really nice in my opinion. But looking at him, he is the only solo fighter in the box. He's got 15 health, he is ranged, which is always good, but he's only move 2, so he's a little bit slow. And his special ability is Brainwashed, and it says effects on Winter Soldier's cards cannot be cancelled. So I think we've seen that before with Sherlock Holmes. So it's a very basic effect, but incredibly powerful, as we know. And down here it says, it's time for me to face the past no matter what. So Winter Soldier's whole thing is that he has these cards with star icons on them. The card effects have the star, and that means that they're detrimental effects. So effects that you don't necessarily want to trigger, but even if your opponent feints you, they will still trigger because your ability means your cards can't be cancelled. But that's where a boy named Bucky comes in. So this scheme says ignore any star effects on your cards for the rest of your turn, and you gain an action. So there's 2 copies of this in the deck, so that's going to be how you bypass those negative effects on your cards. But with only 2 copies of this in the deck, finding it may be a little bit unreliable, so you're going to have to just bite the bullet and, you know, deal with the negative effects a lot of the time. But 3 boost value is good to see on a move 2 fighter. So then we'll move into the actual cards in the deck. This is going to be manipulation. So this is the only other scheme rather than boy named Bucky. And it says draw until you have 5 cards in your hand, but then each opponent may draw until they have 5 cards in their hand as well. So both players are going to end with 5 cards when you play this scheme. So it's definitely not a pass. And I guess maybe you could use it as a pass for yourself if you already have more than 5, because then you won't draw any. And maybe you can force the opponent to draw extra if they're at a low hand. So if you happen to be at a big hand count, they're at a low hand count, you can force them into some draw. Although it does say may draw, so I guess I'll take that back. All the negative effects that give your opponent card draw and whatnot, I think are optional for the opponent, so they're not forced to take the draw and get closer to fatigue if they don't want it. So, but anyways, boy named Bucky is going to cancel the opponent card draw, so it'll definitely let you get some big hand advantage on your opponent if you happen to need it, as long as you combo the 2 schemes together in the same turn. So another 3 boost value, pretty good to see. This card, I don't think it's incredible or anything. It's a little situational, but I could see it being really, really useful in certain aggro matchups against like the T-Rex or the Raptors again, where you just need to survive. So definitely a good card to at least have in the deck somewhere, and the 3 boost, if you don't need the actual effect, I think will come in handy. So then we're going to see Without Remorse. So 6 value printed attack, 3 copies in the deck. This is Bigfoot's log right here, right? And after combat, your opponent may draw 1 card. So giving your opponent card draw, it's not great, right? Because it is optional, so it's never going to be bad for your opponent, only beneficial for them. So, but I think it's definitely worth it to get a 6 value attack. I think it's a great trade, and you would take that all day. Then we're going to see Bionic Arm. So only a 2 value attack, but during combat, if Winter Soldier is adjacent to the opposing fighter, the value of this card is a 6 instead. And remember, none of his cards can be cancelled, so if you get adjacent to them, you can just turn this into a 6, guaranteed, unless they have some kind of movement effect that is immediate, or during combat, which either of which effects would be pretty crazy. So after combat, though, your opponent moves each of their fighters up to 5 spaces. So again, it's negative for you, but you don't really care when you're smacking them with a 6. So this card is incredibly strong, and 3 copies in the deck. That brings you up to 6 total 6 value attacks in this deck, which is huge damage output. Then we're going to see Program to Kill. After combat, if you won the combat, you take 2 damage. So that's really, really bad, but you do have to win the combat, so it is situational. If the opponent value blocks really well, which they're going to want to with all those 6s in your deck, then you won't win the combat and you'll avoid the auto damage to yourself. Or, of course, if you combine it with a boy named Bucky, you don't have to worry about it regardless. But I don't know. This card, it's not that good because ultimately, in the best case scenario, it's a blank 4, right? And in the worst case scenario, it's a blank 4 that you take 2 damage. So either way, it's a pretty bad card, but there's only 2 copies in the deck, and it's whatever, right? You got to have some duds in the deck so that you can make room for all the really powerful stuff. Then we see Marksman. This is kind of cool. It's during combat. Add +1 to this card's value for each space between you and the opposing fighter along the shortest path. And there's 3 copies of this in the deck, so you'll see it pretty often. But the longer you can shoot from range, the more powerful this is going to get. And again, they cannot feint it. So it could be potentially pretty powerful. You could get this thing probably up to a 4 pretty reliably, and upwards of like, I don't know, a 6 on certain maps. And if you're on like Yukon and in the gray in the loop, and the opponent is in the gray in the center area, that's a lot of spaces around. This thing could probably get up to like a 10 value or something ridiculous, but it's a pretty neat card. Not super powerful, but it can be good in the right circumstance on the right map. And then we have Complete the Mission. 3 value block. During combat, you may boost this card, so that's already pretty good. After combat, deal damage to the opposing fighter equal to the amount of combat damage you took. So pretty much you can boost to avoid damage for both of you, or you can choose not to boost, and if you're getting hit hard, you're going to also share that damage. So either way, it's a win-win, and it's a during combat effect of boosting, so you can just choose whatever fits the situation. So this card is a pretty dang good defense card with 3 copies in the deck. Then, oh boy, this is the most controversial card, I think, in the deck. I can see this being an absolute problem in competitive play. That is going to be Reprogram. 2 value versatile. After combat, choose 3 cards in your discard pile and shuffle them into your deck. 3 copies of this in the deck. So we thought Daredevil was bad, but oh boy, Winter Soldier has a cycling card to let him go infinite that cannot be canceled. So you play around Daredevil by fainting when you know he's going to go in for a Devil of Hell's Kitchen attack, right? That cancels the cycle. Winter Soldier can't be canceled, so he can just go infinite always. Almost guaranteed. You'd have to discard these cards somehow with either random discard or, you know, with Black Panther could put them on the Vibranium suit to steal them out of the deck, or Moon Knight has a similar effect to knock cards out of the opponent's deck, but it's going to be near impossible to stop the cycling of Winter Soldier, and so he's going to be able to go infinite in Fatigue, never run out of his deck, and so I don't know how you're going to kill him, because he's got really hard-hitting attacks, and he can just infinitely cycle his deck, so I can see this being a problem in competitive play, honestly, but we'll see. You know, things at first glance definitely don't always play out the way you expect, and maybe he has some weaknesses, like he doesn't have the most quantity of defense cards, I guess, but let's take a look at some more of them. This one, Born in the Barracks, is a 3 value versatile. After combat, if you won, Winter Soldier recovers 2 health. Only 2 copies of this in the deck, but really powerful effect if you can trigger the healing. He only starts at 15 health, so it's a little bit low, and he is a solo fighter, so maybe if you can aggress on him or get some big hits quick, you can take him out before he can cycle infinitely on you. But this card definitely is something to look out for. It's going to probably be best used on defense for Winter Soldier, because if your opponent throws a bait attack just to lower your hand count, then you'll be able to capitalize and get the healing, though it's kind of a toss-up because you never know what they're going to throw. But if you can trigger this card, very, very good. And then we see Reflex Memories. So a printed 5 value versatile is something I don't think we've seen yet in the game, so that is really, really powerful. But after combat, you discard 2 random cards and then draw 2 cards. So this card is a little risky to play. I mentioned with the reprogramming, right, the infinite cycles, you only get it cut off if you lose all your copies of this card somehow. So the first copy of this you need to play in order to get whatever. Then this goes to your discard pile. The second copy of Reprogram, you're able to recycle the first Reprogram, and that's how you make the loop, right? So if your opponent waits until after you do the first Reprogram, that's when they're going to try to fish out the other ones by discarding them, if at all possible even. And so you need to be careful when you're playing Reflex Memories, because you don't want to accidentally discard your Reprograms if you're trying to infinitely cycle. So you're going to have to be careful of when you play this effect. Of course, you have a boy named Bucky, the scheme, to negate this, and then it's just a blank versatile 5, which is really good, but that would mean if you're comboing it with Bucky that you're using this on offense. So a red 5 rather than a blue 5, and blue 5s are really what are incredibly powerful in this game, so I don't know. It's a little risky, but crazy to see a versatile 5 value card. Then we see Wily Fighting. That's the standard card we've seen before from Robin Hood and Wukong and the like. So after combat, deal a damage to each opposing fighter adjacent to Winter Soldier. 2 copies of this in the deck is a pretty solid card. And then last but not least, we see a full package of 3 feints. So immediately cancel all effects on the opponent's card. And that is going to be it for Winter Soldier's deck. So nothing too crazy other than, I think, the infinite cycle. I know a boy named Bucky lets you ignore all those detrimental effects, but honestly, those effects aren't that bad for you in most cases. So I don't think it's crucial to find Bucky before you start using your cards. When we played our 3-for-all, my girlfriend Harley was playing Winter Soldier, and she didn't know what Bucky did because, again, it was a blind play, so she thought that that was going to be a crucial card in the deck, so she kind of played pretty passively until she was able to find it, and turns out it's really not that crucial. You don't need to play around it. And I kind of wish you did, honestly. I think it'd be more unique and more fun if Boy Named Bucky was more impactful to the functioning of the rest of the deck. But either way, it's still kind of neat. It's a cool concept, and the reprogram is really just what I'm concerned about, because I don't know that people are going to be able to take this guy out if he wants to play a long defensive fatigue game, but we're going to have to wait and see. So overall, really cool deck, and I'm looking forward to finding out just how OP Winter Soldier can be. But let's take a look at the map, and I got a couple more things to talk about real quick before we end the video. Alright, so looking at the map, the Helicarrier, I just wanted to talk about the new scheme tokens and show these off a little bit. So the first one, item token, is just the +1. It's going to be the reinforced gloves. +1 is fine, nothing crazy there. And then the other ones are +2s, so much like Hell's Kitchen map, you have 2 of the 2s and 1 of the 1s, instead of on the raft was 2 of the 1s and 1 of the 2s, but the +2s are obviously much more impactful. So this one is the shield issued blaster, and then the other one we're gonna see is the wrench. So the industrial wrench there for +2. Now here's where it gets really interesting, of course, right? Are the scheme tokens. This is what everybody wants to see. So this one right here is probably the least impactful of the 3, but still pretty crazy. It's the rocket pack. So you place your fighter in any space. That has to be the fighter who uses the scheme token. So if it's a sidekick, then you get to put the sidekick in any space. But it's a pass, because you don't draw a card, you don't gain an action, you just get movement. So you can use it as a pass, and to be able to teleport to anywhere on the board could be very good. Next one, oh my goodness, this thing right here. This is the laser turret. So you deal 2 damage to a fighter in your zone. So that's like a momentary glance from Medusa, or a spear throw from Achilles. So that's just crazy. Now, this is a pass because you're not drawing or gaining action, and it's 2 auto damage outside of your deck, which could help you close out a game in a difficult matchup when you might be struggling to find your damage otherwise. So that's just ridiculous, right? But you do have to remember this is a momentary glance, not the spear throw. The difference being that if you are the only fighter in your zone, you cannot just waste this scheme as a pass, because you will take 2 auto damage yourself if you are the only fighter in your zone. So definitely something to keep in mind. But the last, and definitely not least, of the scheme tokens, this ridiculous thing right here, is the EMP Pulse Array. So all players discard 2 cards. That is just insane, right? Everybody discards 2 cards. Now this does include yourself, but I don't know, it's just ridiculous. Like, certain fighters don't really care, like Winter Soldier or Daredevil, who can go infinite, they don't really care. Or fighters who have some cards in their deck that aren't like crucial to use and they're not really necessary to win, then you just throw away the junk, and maybe you catch your opponent having to discard really quality cards if you use it at the right time. And that one is also a pass, because no drawing, no action gain. So the scheme tokens in this game, in this map, are pretty ridiculous, but I personally love the scheme tokens. I think the items in general make for a lot of really cool plays in Unmatched, and so I'm a big fan. I like to see more of them being made and see what kind of crazy stuff they can do. So for competitive play, it can be a little bit crazy, because they can definitely swing games, but that's just something you got to play around, and I personally think that's kind of cool. Overall, when we did our 3-way free-for-all, it was a blast. It started off something like I was Black Widow going 3rd, then my friend was Black Panther here going 2nd, and my girlfriend Harley was going 1st as Winter Soldier. And it was interesting because there was a lot of pins that happened. Like at one point I was camping the rocket pack here with Black Widow, and Black Panther came over. He was like here or something. He used his scheme to move over, and Shuri was around, and then he used an attack that let him move me, and then he pinned me right here. He put Shuri in this space, and I was stuck in a pin with nowhere to move for a while. That was kind of crazy. Then he ran away over here because I got big hand advantage on him with my mission that drew 5 cards. And then I ended up pinning him over here with Black Widow, and then I had Maria Hill over there on the 2-player starting spot to pin in Black Panther. Meanwhile, Winter Soldier was kind of camping the center area, just maneuvering and taking shots here and there. And I ran out of deck very quickly because when I had like 3 cards left in deck, Black Panther played that scheme that mills the 2 cards off my deck and puts them on the suit, and I didn't even know that card existed. So that was definitely a big surprise. And it was just a super fun game overall, and Winter Soldier did end up winning that one by quite a bit. But I think we kind of ignored Winter Soldier for the most part because he wasn't doing too much throughout the game, just a lot of maneuvering and little attacks here and there. We didn't see anything crazy coming out of him, so we kind of ignored him and fought against each other, and then Winter Soldier ended up winning. But it was really fun overall. I love doing the blind plays when you draw these new cards and they just have these crazy effects. It's just so much fun, so I would highly recommend anybody to try that out if they can avoid spoilers at all, which I know is very difficult. But yeah, overall, I think people were really worried about this set being overpowered. And while I do think they're all strong, I don't think any of them necessarily jump to me as incredibly OP. It's nothing like Elektra or Sherlock or Medusa or even Wukong. I feel like these fighters, although they're good, there's a lot going on. And so there's a lot of factors that come into play. And I just think it's really fun to play around. I think all of them have really cool gimmicks and whatnot. And they should make an impact in the meta for sure. I will say that. But I don't know that they're going to be overpowered. I guess if I had to, put my eye on one of them, it'd be Winter Soldier, just because I think going infinite can be incredibly deadly. But we're going to have to see if he does have a weakness where maybe his defenses are lacking, maybe he doesn't have a lot of draw power outside of his scheme card, and maybe you can rush him down and deal damage quick enough where you don't have to worry about him going infinite cycle on you. But we'll see. I definitely want to play Black Panther more. That's the one that is my favorite, and I could see myself probably playing Black Panther in competitive play. So we'll see what happens, but definitely excited to try all of them, and I will hopefully be streaming some games soon. But yeah, I hope you guys all enjoyed the box opening for King and Country, and cannot wait to play more. Alright, that's going to do it for the box opening for King and Country, and honestly, this is probably my favorite of all the Marvel sets. I'm the most excited for this one than I have been of all of them. Way back when all the Marvel sets were announced, this was the one I was most hyped up for. So to finally have this in hand is just super cool, and I cannot wait to test these guys out more because I can definitely see myself playing all 3 of these fighters in competitive play. So I will definitely try to stream a lot of these games with the new fighters on my Twitch channel. So make sure you check me out there at twitch.tv/ZeroSkater12 if you want to join in, hang out in the chat, and watch some of these new fighters in action live. So looking to do a lot more of that. I didn't get to do nearly as much as I wanted to for the Teen Spirit set, but really hoping to catch up with King and Country because, again, this is just my most hyped up Marvel set. It's awesome. I love everything going on in this box. Can't wait to test it out more. So definitely check me out on Twitch, and that'll do it for the video. So give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe if you're not already, and consider supporting me on Patreon, where you can support me in bringing you more Unmatched content. If you subscribe to be at least a silver tier patron, you can cast your vote for Matchup of the Month, the other big series that I do, where every month I, explore a new matchup suggested by the patrons. And so if you want to cast your votes, make sure to support me on there, and I really appreciate all the support from everybody out there. And I hope you enjoy the content because I love making it for you guys, and I love hearing all the feedback. So be sure to comment down below what you think of the new King and Country fighters, and that's going to do it for today. So thank you all for watching. I'm ZeroSkater12, and I'll see you next time.